Let's go to 2020 now, and a new poll on the Democratic field. A new UMass poll on the New Hampshire Democratic primary has Joe Biden leading at 28%, despite not yet even announcing a bid officially. But coming in second, Bernie Sanders at 20%. He is followed by Kamala Harris at 14%. Elizabeth Warren comes in at 9%. Let's bring in Lauren Leader, co-founder and CEO of All In Together, and Republican strategist Joe Watkins, former White House aide to President George H.W. Bush. Big good morning to you both. Lauren, I do want to point out here that the poll was conducted before Bernie Sanders officially announced. But give me a read on the way Democrats should interpret these numbers. Do you think it's still giving a green light to Joe Biden?
Well, I mean, I always say that I feel like the polls this early in the cycle are really an exercise in futility. I mean, it's good fodder for conversation, but they really are so meaningless because it's so early. And as you say, I mean, we're polling it. They were polling a candidate that wasn't even in the race at that point. I think New Hampshire is not really the bellwether that it used to be, and I do think that they will, that both Biden and Sanders will continue to poll well in New Hampshire. I think the bigger issue for either of them is going to be South Carolina, especially in a field where we have multiple candidates of color. There's enormous passion for Kamala Harris in South Carolina. A lot of the candidates have been stumping there very early. So, New Hampshire, I just don't think is the bellwether it once was, but certainly it's getting people's attention because you've got one candidate who's not even in the race yet polling at the top of the pack.
Right. Do you think, Joe, that this gives a green light to Joe Biden? I mean, do you think that he's looking at these early poll numbers? I mean, I get exactly what Lauren's saying about being snapshots and you can't really take a lot from them, but does this influence him in deciding whether or not he's going to run?
I don't know. He's been at it a while, and I think he's a person that a lot of Democrats believe can actually win in a general election and can maybe unify the Democratic Party. So I think he's got that going for him. But he's smart. He realizes there's a lot to consider here. He's got to consider his family and the fact that he already has a really great reputation nationally. It'll probably get mudded up a little bit in these primaries, I'm guessing, in a crowded primary.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris, by the way, looks surprisingly strong.
Yeah, no, Kamala Harris really does. Vanity Fair, Lauren, has a report titled Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren on a 2020 collision course. Do you agree with that? I mean, it was something that when she announced, and we were covering that live when she did, and we talked about the amount of money that she'd be raising and the how she would be doing it. That was one point that we thought she and Bernie Sanders could definitely clash.
Yeah, and I just don't think that Bernie has the same prospects this time around. I mean, he benefited enormously in the last cycle from essentially being the only alternative to Hillary Clinton, and I don't think he's going to have those same advantages this time. He has raised a tremendous amount of money, but the reality is that there are a lot more voices in the presidential field who have very similar views to his and who actually share many of his policy positions. I mean, you look at even someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who we forget, left the Democratic National Committee in order to endorse Bernie very early in the cycle in 2016. And so you've got all these people who actually, on a policy perspective, are very similar to him. I think he's going to have a much harder time standing out. He's got the national name recognition, and that's obviously a huge boost. He's a movement and a personality, and that helps him. But I think in a crowded field, I think he's going to struggle. And I also, to Joe's point, I think Biden's going to wait and see how some of these early primaries, how some of this early time shakes out. He has time. He is not in a rush because he has such wide national name recognition.
Yeah, exactly.
He can come
His
in
name
later.
recognition is absolutely there. Real quick, Joe, another poll, rather the UMass poll, looked at whether New Hampshire Republicans think that the president should face a primary challenge. Look at that number. Only 39% saying yes, 61% saying no. How do you read that?
Well, I think the president's not too worried. He knows how to campaign for sure, and he's got a pretty solid base of support among Republicans. John Kasich could challenge him. He could be challenged by Governor Hogan as well from Maryland. But I think President Trump is not terribly worried at this point.
Okay, Joe and Lauren, thanks for the chat, guys. Good to see you.